Of a quorum, the Sergeant at Arms will prepare the chamber and bring in the absent members. The clerk will call the roll.
Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Bell, Berryhill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler, Calderon, Campos, Carter, Cedillo, Chesbro, Conway, Cook, Davis, Dickinson, Donnelly, Ing, Fior, Fletcher, Fong, Fuentes, Furtani, Gaines, Galgiani, Garrick, Gatto, Gordon, Gorell, Grove, Hagman, Halderman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Weso, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Lara, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mansour, Mendoza, Miller, Mitchell, Monning, Morrell, Nestande, Nielsen, Norby, Olson, Pan, Perea, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Yamada. Mr. Speaker.
Okay, members, a quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papadimos, to offer the day's prayer.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you all. Let us pray. Lord, the new year can be an excellent opportunity for us to hit the reset button. It can be a chance for us to look at the physical, social, and spiritual aspects of our life and to make adjustments that will bring us closer to you and bring us a sense of balance and fulfillment. Instill within us, Lord, the desire to seek balance in our life, to live healthier, with more joy, and with more devotion to you. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assembly Member Buchanan as she leads us in the pledge. Ms. Buchanan.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Friday, September 9, 2011. Assembly met at 10 a.m. On behalf of Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly, presiding Chief Clerk E. Dustin Wilson at the desk. Reading Clerk Timothy Moore. Then reading. The roll was called. Assembly Member Cook moved to quorum call of the Assembly. Motion carried. Time 10 a.m. Speaker Pro Tem directed the Sergeant at Arms to close the door and bring the absent members. The roll was called. Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Bell, Berryhill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler, Calderon, Campos, Carter, CDO, Chesbro, Conway, Cook, Davis, Dickinson, Donnelly, Ing, Fear, Fletcher, Fong, Fuentes, Furtani, Gaines, Gaggiani, Garrett, Gatto, Gordon, Grove, Hagman, Halderman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Waso, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Lara, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mansour, Mendoza, Miller, Mitchell, Monty, Morel, Nestande, Nielsen, Norby, Olsen, Pan, Perea, Emmanuel, Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Umada. Mr. Speaker, upon request of the Assistant Speaker Pro Tem, Gatto, Assembly Member Halderman led the Assembly to pledge allegiance to the flag. Further reading of the journal of the previous legislative was dispensed with on the motion that Assembly Member Charles Calderon, seconded by Assembly Member Allen. By unanimous consent, the following Assembly Member was granted leaves of absence on active military duty deployment, waiving all per diem. Assembly Member Gorell, journal page 452. The following communication was presented by the Chief Clerk in order to print it in the journal. E. Dawson Wilson, to Mr. Wilson, this letter is to clarify how I would have voted on the bills that I missed on May 19, 2011. On May 19th, I was excused from the session for legislative business from Speaker John A. Perez. Although I was not excused absence from the session, my absence was not reflected in the journal because I was there for the first 30 minutes. As a result of excused absence, I am recorded and abstained vote on the majority of the bills where votes were taken on that day. The following list is all the bills that I missed, how I would have voted for if I had been in session. Assembly Bill 1360I, 1036I. Assembly Bill 222I, Assembly Bill 211I, Assembly Bill 325I, Assembly Bill 459I, Assembly Bill 554I, Senate Concurrent Resolution 36I, Assembly Bill 683I, Assembly Bill 688I.
Mr. Calderon moves and Ms. Conway seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker, of course, I think a formal congratulations is in order on your nuptials, and so I want to add that. I want to also acknowledge everyone about the new year and wish them the best. And with that, it's back to business. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 to allow Assembly members Berryhill and Knight to have guests at their desk and a photographer on the floor.
Without objection.
Also request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5. Request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly members Alejo, Amiano, Bradford, Calderon, Campos, Conway, Dickinson, Fong, Harkey, Ma, Morel, and Williams to speak on adjourned memory.
Without objection.
And now committee-to-committee re-referrals based on amendments that were adopted on the second reading file. Pursuant to Assembly Rule 96, request unanimous consent to refer the following bills to committee. AB 248, Perea, from Higher Education to the Revenue and Taxation Committee.
Without objection.
AB 367 by Mr. Smythe from the Aging and Long-Term Care Committee to the Business Professions and Consumer Protection Committee.
Without objection.
AB 526 by Mr. Dickinson to the Public Safety Committee only.
Without objection.
AB 578 Hill from the Governmental Organization Committee to the Utilities Committee.
Without objection.
AB 643 from the Banking and Finance Committee to the Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy Committee.
Without objection.
AB 704 by Ms. Ma from the Business, Professions, and Consumer Protection Committee to the Judiciary Committee.
Without objection.
AB 868 from the Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee to the Education Committee.
Without objection.
SB 880 from the Natural Resources Committee to the Housing and Community Development and Judiciary Committees.
Without objection.
AB 1068 from the Transportation Committee to the Public Safety Committee.
Without objection.
AB 1160 from the Business, Professions, and Consumer Protection Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection.
AB 1191 from the Transportation Committee to the Local Government Committee.
Without objection.
AB 1197 from the Public Safety Committee to the Judiciary Committee.
Members, House will be in order.
Yes,
If
Madam.
you keep down the chatter.
Madam Speaker, if we can't get order and decorum, I would request that you consider asking members to take their seats.
Without objection.
Where did I leave off? Was it Hill? Did we do Hill? Are we on E17? All right, AB 1278 from the Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy Committee to the Health Committee.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We believe this bill should be double referred and ask for a roll call vote and object to this.
Mr. Calderon moves to re-refer this bill. Takes a second. Mr. Allen seconds. Members, if you could take your seat, we're going to take a vote. Okay, this takes 41 votes, and it's debatable to the propriety of the reference. Mr. Calderon.
There's a vote to refer this. Let me state it again. AB 1278 from the Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy Committee to the Health Committee. There is an objection and a request for roll call vote. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is an amendment of a bill that has not gone through the Rules Committee. We believe it should also go to not only the Health Committee but the GO Committee, and that's why we're asking for objection to this vote at this time.
Okay, it takes 41 votes. Mr. Calderon is asking for an aye vote to re-refer this bill from the Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy Committee to the Health Committee, and Mr. Hagman is asking for a no vote. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 22. Measure passes. Motion carries. Mr. Calderon.
Request to re-refer AB 1354 from the Business, Professions, and Consumer Protection Committee to the Judiciary Committee.
Without objection.
Request to re-refer AB 1378 from the Governmental Organization Committee to the Judiciary Committee.
Without objection.
And on file notice waivers, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 56 to allow a local government committee to hear the following bills on Wednesday, January 11, 2012, at 1:30 p.m. in room 447. That's AB 785, pending re-referral from the Elections and Redistricting Committee, and AB 1198 pending re-referral from the Housing and Community Development Committee.
Without objection.
Also request unanimous consent to suspend a joint Rule 62A to allow Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee to meet and to hear AB 157 on Tuesday, January 10th at 1:30 p.m. in room 444.
Without objection.
And finally, at the request of the authors and pursuant to Assembly Rule 78, I'm giving one-day notice of intent to remove the following bills from inactive file: AB 832, AB 625, AB 1017, and AB 356.
Without objection, clerk will note. Members, we have some guests here with us to the chamber. I see Board of Equalization Chair Mr. Jerome Horton and former Assembly Member Mr. Jerome Horton. Mr. Berryhill, your guest. Would you like to introduce your guest?
Yes, it's my privilege today to have my daughter Alex. She's on break from going to Cal, and so all you Cal grads can be very proud of her, and she is getting ready to embark on a trip to Jamaica with the Habitat for Humanity to help build some housing over there. So I'm very proud to have her here today. Thank you.
Okay, business on the daily file, there is none. Assembly third reading, there is none. Senate third reading, there is none. We've got a couple of announcements. The Insurance Committee meeting. A reminder that the Insurance Committee will meet upon adjournment of session in room 437 today. Insurance Committee will meet in room 437 today upon adjournment, and the Rules Committee will also meet upon adjournment in the Rules Committee room. Rules Committee will also meet upon adjournment in the Rules Committee room. We have a number of requests to adjourn in memory today. Members, if you're going to do adjourn in memory, if you could please be by your desks so I can recognize you. Mr. Alejo, Mr. Amiano, Mr. Bradford, Mr. Calderon, Ms. Conway, Mr. Dickinson, Ms. Harkey, Mr. Morrell, Mr. Williams, Mr. Fong, and Ms. Campos. Who's ready? Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I rise today to ask this House to adjourn in memory for Marcela Calderon. You know, I've had a long history in this legislature, and I'm sure many of you think too long a history. But in that time, I've had the bittersweet opportunity to announce the passing of my family, but also to recognize the contributions that they have made. For those of you who were here, or those of you within this, hear the sound of my voice, you remember when I did for my mother, and now today for Marcela Calderon. New Year's Day ended a 2-year fight with cancer. But it wasn't the cancer that got her. It was the therapy, the chemotherapy. She ultimately succumbed to the chemotherapy on New Year's Day. It was unexpected to happen on that day that quickly. She was admitted on New Year's Eve, and by New Year's Day, at the approximate same time, she was gone. And so in that sense, it was a major blow to her family, immediate family, and to our family at large, and of course to former Assembly member Tom Calderon, her husband. She made many, many contributions as an individual, a life, but also as a public servant. She served on the school board for Montebello Unified School District for over 16 years. She was, in large part, responsible for having an election successfully to adopt a bond measure to build the first technical high school in the district. And she pushed for that technical high school. While she was on the school board, students' achievement increased and rose. She was on the board for the Beverly Hospital Foundation. It was a board to support that institution, to try and help raise dollars to keep it open. The only real community hospital in the area, and one that has struggled to stay open for years and years, and she was always working hard to do that. She always had the time to meet with students, had time to meet with those that she cared about the most, and that was the future of our state. And she worked hard to try, in spite of dismal economic times and dismal budget situation, she's attempted to still do the job and get the job done. She also helped build a lobbying, well, it's not really a lobbying, it's a policy firm, Calderon and Associates, along with her husband, Tom Calderon. And then she was a devoted wife to her husband, and a devoted mother. There's good news here, and there are things to celebrate. She had 2 years to be able to do what she needed to do with her family. And in that time, she was able to see her daughter get married in San Francisco recently. She was able to see her son begin to straighten out and finally decide on a career, she'd always say. And she was able to find that time that would carry her family through these difficult times. And so that's good. The contributions that she's made, that's good. She's gone, but she's not forgotten, and she has contributed greatly to others as a life. And just let me say, life is so precious, and we just take it for granted. It may well be that this is the only planet in the universe that has life. We should value our own and those of others. And she always wanted that. We get too caught up in things that we're doing while we're waiting to pass. We should remember how unique and how valuable each person is that we come in contact with, and how that contact helps make this a better world or one not as good. Marcella made this a better world. We will miss her, and so I ask you members to adjourn in memory.
Mr. Cedillo.
I had an incredible evening on Monday. I took my granddaughter to the show to see Tintin. And nothing is more exciting and delightful than taking a 5-year-old to see a 3D movie. But as I drove back to drop her off to my son's house, I took a text message from my staff, and he gave me notice that Marcella had just passed away. We were all shocked. We were with her a few weeks ago on a panel in the city of Bell Gardens talking about higher education, the California Dream Act. I had the privilege of introducing her and acknowledging her very stellar public life. But as the senator said, more important than her public life was the value of her personal life. She loved her husband, Tom Calderon. She set aside many of her personal ambitions to support this man who is truly committed to public service, and did so in a way that allowed him to be all that he could be. There's no question, those who know the family, know the household, that Marcella was the person who was the strength, the pillar of that household, the anchor, if you will. She was very close to my son and to my family, particularly after my wife passed away. And I want to concur with the senator that what's most important about what we do here is the things we do to improve the quality of life. Life is the most precious thing that we are engaged in. And to the extent that we can learn from the tremendous love that Marcella had for her family, and for her husband, and for her life and the life of those people she served, we will all be better for that. I thank you.
Mr. Amiano.
First, I wanted to extend my deep condolences to the Calderon family. I didn't know Mr. Calderon's sister-in-law, but listening about her and her life is very, very significant. I also stand to ask for adjournment in memory for a dear friend, Michael Goldstein. He was a member of the Democratic Central Committee in San Francisco, a very trusted individual. He lived and breathed a political atmosphere. And as he was dying, he wanted certain things said about him at the various memorials that we are going to be having for him. One, as a longtime survivor of HIV, that crisis obviously is not over, and that legislatively any attention to the issue would be much appreciated by Mr. Goldstein and his family. He also was a great champion of medical marijuana and fought very hard for Prop 215 to pass, and he did benefit from that. And again, he wanted that to be mentioned in any remarks about him, because he was getting somewhat upset about the high profile on medical marijuana that has turned out to be somewhat negative, and ironically, in the last few weeks of his life. There was no one quite like Michael. He was a constant. I think all of you know, as electeds, there is no premium on loyalty, and his loyalty to anyone who he worked for or with was stellar. And so we're going to miss Michael very, very much. I have talked to a few people about establishing a scholarship in Michael's name for LGBT youth, and I hope that makes fruition. And I respectfully ask that we adjourn in memory.
Thank you, Mr. Amiano. Mr. Morrell.
Thank you. It is good to be back and see all of you. But unfortunately, with great sadness, there was a young gentleman in my district, Carlo Francisco Eugenio, only 29 years old, who was the first California National Guardsman to be killed in Afghanistan. Mr. Carlo was born in the Philippines and is remembered by his parents and his 5 brothers and sisters. He grew up in my district in Fontana, California, and graduated from Etijuana High School. Also, some of his sports that he loved was dirt biking, snowboarding, and of course his favorite was being a soldier. And such a young age to give his life to our dear country. He was a valuable resource to this institution, and his work will be greatly appreciated. He gave up his life as the ultimate sacrifice to defend our freedoms. Carlo was laid to rest on Monday, November 14th, at the Riverside National Cemetery in Riverside, California. He will be missed by his family, friends, and the community he so gladly served, and ask the members to adjourn in Carlo's memory. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Morell. Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My deepest sympathy to the Calderon family. It's hard to lose somebody like that, and thank you for sharing your personal statements. I would like to adjourn in memory of Robert Campbell. Members, he's been a longtime commercial real estate investor in Orange County and an expert in the field and a resident of Aliso Viejo. Bob was 71. He was born in Oakland and earned a degree in engineering from Santa Clara University and a master's and PhD in business administration from UCLA. Bob founded CT Realty, a company that oversaw significant growth in Orange County over the past few decades. He was also a founder of Pacific National Bank in Newport Beach. Bob earned many awards and accolades during his lifetime, including a Lifetime Achievement Award from UC Irvine, Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Award, a proclamation of the City of Newport Beach and Orange County, United Way's Dan's Donahue Award. He is survived by his wife, Jean, of 37 years, his sister, Ray Nash, daughter-in-law, Kristen, and son, Rob Verneck, and daughter, Kelly, and son-in-law, Michael McFadden, and 5 grandchildren. I ask that we adjourn in his memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harkey. Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with great sadness that I rise to adjourn in memory of Warren Hellman, who passed away in the beginning of December after a long, courageous battle with leukemia. I had the honor of getting to know Mr. Hellman almost 15 years ago, and I can honestly say that he is one of the kindest, smartest, and generous men our state will ever be so positively influenced by. If I were to name all of his accomplishments, today's session would never end. Frederick Warren Hellman was born in New York in 1934 to an investment banker and his wife. World War II brought his family to California, and both of his parents served in the war effort. The family then moved to Vacaville to San Francisco after the war, where Warren attended Lowell High School. His good grades led him to UC Berkeley and then to receive his MBA from Harvard Business School in 1959. His first job after Harvard was at Lehman Brothers Investment Bank, where he quickly developed a reputation as an exceptionally driven young man. By the age of 38, he went from the company's youngest partner to president. In 1984, he returned to California and formed Hellman and Friedman private equity firm with Tully Friedman, a business that took a unique approach to buying out firms and then improving them as a whole rather than tearing it down and selling off its parts. While Warren was incredibly successful in his career, he enjoyed philanthropy and giving back to the community more than his business deals. Giving really does move me, he said. Part of it is selfish. It's fun to be appreciated, but the other part is that good things really are growing. Arguably, his most visible selfless gift is San Francisco's hardly strictly bluegrass festival. Warren, who loved to tell people he was an amateur banjo player, started the Bluegrass Festival in 2001, and today it has grown into a 3-day, multiple-stage event with dozens of bands and 300,000 people in attendance. The amazing spectacle in Golden Gate Park is free, with costs covered by an endowment that Mr. Hellman created to ensure that the concert would continue even after he passed on. Mr. Hellman is survived not only by the incredible legacy he built for himself, but by his wife, Patricia Christina Chris Hellman, son Mick, daughters Frances, Judith, and Patricia, his sister Nancy, and his 12 grandchildren. I know that San Francisco is forever grateful for Mr. Hellman. I ask that we adjourn in his memory today.
Thank you. Mr. Amiano.
Thank you. I wanted to join Assemblywoman Ma in her memoriam for Mr. Hellman. Warren was really one hell of a guy. We waltzed in different cadence when it came to the particular of politics, but he was truly a Renaissance man, extremely gracious, very, very funny. He showed me his tattoo once, but the thing that I remember him most for was when I was on the Board of Supervisors and we wanted to help out the public schools. He was a proud graduate of San Francisco Public Schools and a great champion of public schools. So we put a ballot measure on the June ballot a few years ago, and it passed overwhelmingly, and Warren was out there beating the bushes and frankly bankrolled a lot of the campaign. This particular ballot measure will now every year kicks in and provides funds for the public schools in San Francisco in sports, libraries, arts, and music. I recently learned that the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco, in deference to Warren's legacy, has renamed Speedway Meadows in Golden Gate Park as Hellman Meadows. And we all look forward to next October for the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival. And I know we'll be hearing those banjo pluckings in our minds and in our hearts.
Mr. Alejo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to welcome everyone back and Feliz Año Nuevo, and my deepest condolences to the Calderon family as well. Today, everyone, I just rise to adjourn in memory of a heroic American and a constituent of the 28th Assembly District, U.S. Army Specialist Ricardo Cerros, Jr., age 24. Specialist Cerros was killed in the line of duty on October 8, 2011 in Afghanistan's Logar province. A native Californian, Specialist Cerros was born in Fort Ord and was raised in Salinas. His love for service started with his involvement in ROTC during high school. He went on to graduate from UC Irvine with a degree in chemistry and distinguished himself as the first member of the university's Taekwondo club to earn a black belt. Following his college graduation, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and was part of an elite group of U.S. Army Rangers. 60% of soldiers who try out for this elite unit do not make or meet the physical or mental rigor needed to be part of this team. He was deployed to Afghanistan to support the war on terror in March of last year. And just a few days before, or a few weeks before passing away, he was involved in another gun battle where he saved the life of his sergeant of his platoon who was gunned down and moved his body to safety. And he was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart, the Combat Infantry Badge, and Afghanistan's Campaign Medal. He is remembered for his wonderful sense of humor and unselfish dedication to service of others. His legacy is celebrated by his father, Ricardo Cerros Sr., and his mother, Marguerite Cuevas, along with the host of family members, loyal friends, and a grateful nation. I ask that we adjourn in his memory.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, rise in memory of a constituent and a longtime friend, Loren Pete Miller, Jr. Loren Pete Miller, Jr. was born in Los Angeles, California on March 27th of 1937 and passed away on December 5th of last year. He attended several schools in Los Angeles, but after graduating high school, Loren attended Los Angeles City College before transferring to the University of Oregon in 1959, where he earned a bachelor's degree in history. Following in the footsteps of his father, Loren Miller Sr., who was appointed to the Superior Court Judge in 1964 by Pat Brown, he enrolled in Loyola University, where he made the dean's list and received many academic awards. In 1962, after graduating from Loyola, Loren joined the Office of California Attorney General and as the Deputy Attorney General. He worked on cases related to business, taxation, and civil rights. In 1972, Loren became Executive Director of the Model Neighborhood Commission on Justice. In 1974, he became the Associate General Counsel for Pacific Lighting Corporation. In 1975, Loren was appointed to the Los Angeles Municipal Court by Governor Edmund G. Brown, Jr., from which he was elevated to the Los Angeles Superior Court in 1977. Until his retirement in January 1997, he had many judicial appointments, including supervising judge in Pomona and accelerated civil calendar at the Stanley Moss Courthouse. He continued to sit by assignment until October of last year. Loren belonged to a number of clubs and organizations, including the John M. Langston Bar Association, the California Association of Black Lawyers, and the California Judges Association. In 2003, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Langston Bar Association. Mr. Miller was known for his kind, gentle, quick-witted, and he loved to share a laugh, his passion for his family and friends, and his work in UCLA sports. In recent years, he took great delight in his alma mater, the University of Oregon, becoming a football powerhouse. Go Ducks. Lauren Miller is survived by his wife, Gwen Allen Miller, his 3 children, 2 of which have followed him in the law. My good friend Michael Miller, who is the alternate public defender for the County of Los Angeles, and his daughter Robin Miller, who's a Superior Court judge, and his 3 stepchildren and 4 granddaughters. He loved the law and was greatly admired and respected. His legacy for public service will continue, and his presence will be missed, but he will never be forgotten. I ask you to join me in adjournment in memory. Thank you.
Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. I rise to adjourn in memory of Clinton Emerson. Dr. Emerson was the father of our friend and colleague, Senator Bill Emerson. He died on Friday in Redlands following a lengthy illness. Dr. Emerson ran a very successful dental practice in the Hemet area. He started it in 1955. He retired from his practice in 2004, and I would note that that was at the age of 85. He's very passionate about raising horses. In fact, located his dental practice on a horse ranch. So for those that didn't find comfort in going to the dentist, at least I guess you could tell them they were going to visit the ranch. For many decades, Dr. Emerson was a community leader and volunteer in the San Jacinto Valley. He was active in the Kiwanis Club and was a program director of the Ramona Bowl Music Association. He also served several terms as a board member of the Southern California Fair. I ask that we adjourn in Clinton Emerson's memory and that we keep Senator Emerson and his family in our thoughts and prayers.
Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I join in extending sympathies to the Calderon family. Earlier this fall, we lost, much too soon, an incomparable ambassador for public policy and politics in California, a man known to many in this chamber and hundreds throughout the Capital community, Tim Hodson. Tim had a truly remarkable career. A native Californian, he received his undergraduate degree from California State University, Fullerton, and then his graduate degree from UC Santa Barbara. In 1978, he ventured to Sacramento, where he became a staff member of the Senate Committee on Political Reform and Government Regulation. And over the next 15 years served in various staff capacities here in the Capitol, building his expertise in the areas of government reform, reapportionment, and related subjects. In 1993, Tim moved to become the executive director of the Center for California Studies, which he built into a nationally recognized and applauded institution, which among its hundreds of graduates includes more than 24 judges and current or former elected officials. Tim had enormous intelligence and insight in the areas of his expertise, and so was often called upon by publications across the state and even across the country to give his opinion and his thoughts about what was occurring in California politics, what was happening with government reform, what was occurring with respect to upcoming elections and campaigns. Tim was a constituent who lived in Land Park, but he was much more than that. Tim and I first got to know each other in the late 1970s when we were both involved in a city council campaign here in the city of Sacramento. And over the years, we built a strong and lasting friendship. I admired Tim as his career took him on the path I've just described, because he became a person who applauded the work of those who were willing to engage civically in the world of debating and creating public policy, willing to put themselves on the line to ask voters for their support. A man who understood the basic and fundamental significance and integrity of our form of government and our exercise of our rights and privileges. Tim was also to be admired for the enormous courage that he showed as he battled cancer through the late stages of his life. Just this last year, we honored Tim as part of the recognition of the fellows who come to this building each year and serve in many of our offices. Tim may be gone, but he leaves a legacy that will stand the test of time for the California State Legislature and for the people of the state of California. I and many here have lost a great friend with Tim's passing, but we are so grateful for having had the chance to get to know this man of dry humor, of great wisdom, and of such strong beliefs in the state of California and its people. I ask that we adjourn in Tim's memory today.
Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, I would also like to say a word or two about Tim Hodgson, one of the unsung heroes of this institution, of the thousands over the years of staff who have worked here in the trenches, behind the scenes with no glory, laboring mightily so that we may do our job and we do it well. They do not get the credit they deserve, and far too seldom do we even, as members, acknowledge them. Well, Tim is one of those heroes who would stack up in the entire history of this institution, all the people who have worked here. He was a man who worked in a bipartisan manner and always a gentleman. My first experience with him was on that government regulation committee as a Republican who wanted to do a lot, and I found he as a consultant to be very helpful, representing his then chairman, Omer Raines, Senator Omer Raines. We became fast friends over the years, and I was delighted when he ascended, I would call it ascend, to steward our fellowship program. And probably nothing better exemplifies the kind of man that he was as to how he would, in fact, motivate those fellows throughout the year of their fellowship. And I've had the occasion to have fellows placed in my office, and I know the value of that program. And he took it to great new heights. I will always remember this true gentleman, and he will always have made a mark on this institution.
Mr. Fong.
It is with a heavy heart that I ask all of you to adjourn in the memory of Mr. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, and at an early age displayed the ingenious that would capture the products he invented and the company that he built. He was a charismatic and ambitious individual who pioneered advancement in computer software, personal computers, consumer electronics, contributing to the recognition of the Silicon Valley as the epicenter of technology throughout the world. Jobs attended several local public schools in my district, which included Monte Loma Elementary School in Mountain View, Cupertino Junior High School, and Homestead High School in Cupertino. As a freshman in high school, Jobs' interest in computers and technology began after being part of the Hewlett-Packard Explorers Club, eventually being hired as a summer employee at HP. In 1971, the revolutionary partnership between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak began. It is through this partnership that Apple's first personal computer was created. After an unsuccessful semester at Reed College in Oregon, Jobs dropped out in order to focus on his true passion, computers. Although he remained near school to audit classes, he always stated it as one of the most important decisions that he made in his life. Because of his decision, he was able to take classes that were of interest to him and ultimately inspired him to take calligraphy, which the sans serif font for the Mac was based on. After dropping out of college, Jobs slept on floors in his friend's house and returned Coke bottles for money in order to make ends meet. He even attended a local Hare Krishna temple for free meals, whose teaching would later be a tremendous influence on his outlook of his life. In 1974, Jobs took his first job at Atari, where he began work with Wozniak to build a circuit board for a video game. Jobs also went to India, where he stayed for 7 months and began to wear traditional Indian clothing. This experience shaped his life later, where he became a serious practitioner of Zen Buddhism and engaged in lengthy meditation retreats. In 1975, Jobs began attending meetings of the Homebrew Computer Club, where Apple was born. Based out of Cupertino, Steve Jobs served as Apple's president. Although he was fired from Apple, Jobs said the heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. In addition, Jobs was the co-founder of Pixar and Next. Steve Jobs inserted innovation and creativity into the personal computer field and changed the way people innovate. During his time at Next, he created the current Apple operating systems are using. Pixar and Dixie created some of the most advanced animation films like Toy Story, Bugs Life, Monsters, Inc., Ratatouille, WALL-E, Finding Nemo, and Cars. In January of 1997, Steve Jobs returned to Apple as the company was on the brink of collapse. During his time as CEO of Apple, the company was able to create some of the most innovative products that the world has ever seen. Not only did he create beautiful, simple laptops that even a child could use, he also created the iPod, iPhone, and iPad, products that have changed the very way we communicate and live our lives today. In 1997, Apple's Think Different campaign perhaps sums up the life of Steve Jobs the best. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. After a long battle with cancer, Steve Jobs passed away on October 5th, 2011. His death was felt in Silicon Valley and around the world. Steve Jobs is survived by his wife, his 3 daughters, his son, and his sister. Please join me in adjourning in the memory of Steve Jobs.
Mr. Williams.
Makes me very happy to see you all again. I think, though, we can agree that 2011 was a year of both great joys and great pains. And one of those pains is standing before you and adjourning in the memory of young men and women that have perished in the twin wars that our country has been fighting. And today I wanted to adjourn in the memory of Army Sergeant Christopher Muniz. He was only 24 years old when was killed by an IED just days before he was scheduled to come back home. He's from a very small town in Santa Barbara County, New Kiama. He was beloved. At his memorial service, he was recalled as a loving and devoted husband, son, and brother, a cherished and thoughtful student, and a loyal and dedicated soldier. He's survived by his wife, Lindsay Beth, both of his parents, Jose and Barbara Muniz, and his brother Joe and half-brothers Tony and Josh, half-sisters Jessica and Michaela. I'd like to adjourn in the memory of Christopher Muniz. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. We've got one more announcement. The PERS committee is canceled today. That's the Public Employees Retirement and Social Security. The hearing notice has been filed that the PERS committee will be canceled today. Session schedule is as follows. Thursday, January 5th, floor session at 9 a.m. Monday, January 9th, floor session at 12 p.m. noon. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves and Ms. Conway seconds that this House stands adjourned until Thursday, January 5th at 9 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.